The moment you clicked on this message, something changed. Not around you. Not inside your phone. But inside the heart of the person who has been trying to hide their true feelings for you. Because something happened recently that they never expected. They discovered something about you. Not because you told them. Not because someone explained it. But because your actions spoke louder than your silence. And when they realized what you had done, everything inside them stopped. Their heartbeat raced. Their hands became cold. For a few terrifying seconds, they couldn't even think clearly. They almost collapsed under the weight of one unbelievable realization. Today, we're going to uncover exactly what happened. Why it shook them so deeply. Why they can no longer see you the same way. And why this discovery is about to change the future of your connection forever. Stay with me until the very end. Because the final revelation explains why your person believes destiny itself is pulling them back toward you, no matter how hard they try to resist. There was a time when they thought they understood you. They believed they had figured out your personality. Your limits. Your emotions. Your patience. Your loyalty. But they were wrong. Completely wrong. Because while they were watching the version of you that smiled, they never noticed the version of you that was quietly transforming behind the scenes. They never imagined that every disappointment, every unanswered message, every lonely night, every painful lesson, was building someone far stronger than they had ever known. Then one day, without warning, they heard about something you did. Maybe it was a decision. Maybe it was a change. Maybe it was the way you handled a difficult situation. Whatever it was, it shattered every assumption they had about you. For the first time, they realized you were no longer waiting for permission to become the person you were meant to be. You had already become that person. And suddenly, they felt afraid. Not because you had done something wrong, but because they understood one painful truth. If you could become this strong without them, then one day, you might no longer need them at all. That thought hit them harder than anything else. People often think heartbreak comes from losing someone. But sometimes, the greatest fear comes from realizing you are about to lose someone who has finally learned to live without you. That realization stayed with them. It followed them everywhere. While working. While driving. While trying to sleep. Even during conversations with other people. Your name kept returning to their mind. Because they couldn't stop replaying what they had learned. Again. And again. And again. Questions filled their thoughts. When did they become so confident? How did I fail to notice? What else have they changed? What if I've already missed my chance? Every answer only made the feeling stronger. Then something even stranger happened. They started comparing the old version of you with the person you are today. The difference shocked them. The old you chased answers. The new you creates peace. The old you waited. The new you walks forward. The old you feared being abandoned. The new you refuses to abandon yourself. And that's when the deepest realization arrived. They weren't just surprised by your growth. They were confronted by their own lack of growth. Sometimes another person's transformation acts like a mirror. Not showing who they are, but showing who we failed to become. That's exactly what happened. Without saying a single word, you forced them to face themselves. And it wasn't comfortable. They remembered moments they ignored your kindness. Moments they delayed important conversations. Moments they assumed you would always stay. Now those memories felt heavier than ever. Because they understood something too late. Nothing remains the same forever. Not people. Not emotions. Not opportunities. Not relationships. Every day something changes. Every decision creates another path. And suddenly, they realized your path was moving farther away from theirs. That possibility terrified them. So they began paying closer attention. Quietly. Without letting anyone know. They searched for small signs. They noticed tiny details. Your confidence. Your calm energy. The way you stopped chasing approval. The way your attention shifted toward your own future. Everything confirmed the same truth. You weren't pretending. You had genuinely changed. And genuine change cannot be reversed overnight. That realization almost overwhelmed them. Because deep inside, they knew something most people never admit. People don't always appreciate someone's value while they have access to them. Sometimes they only recognize that value after watching them walk toward a brighter future. And that's exactly where your person finds themselves now. Watching. Thinking. Wondering. Hoping. Trying to understand how everything changed so quickly. But here's what they still don't fully understand. Your transformation wasn't quick at all. It happened one difficult day at a time. One disappointment at a time. One lesson at a time. One silent victory at a time. While everyone else saw nothing happening. You were rebuilding your entire inner world. Brick by brick. Choice by choice. Until eventually, the impossible became visible. And that's the moment they witnessed. Not the beginning. Not the struggle. Only the result. Which made it seem almost unbelievable. Now they're asking themselves one final question. If they could become this extraordinary once, what will they become next? That question refuses to leave their mind. Because every answer leads to the same conclusion. You are becoming someone impossible to ignore. Someone impossible to replace. Someone impossible to forget. And whether your paths eventually meet again, or whether life carries each of you toward completely different destinations, one truth remains. The discovery they made changed the way they see you forever. The version of you they thought they knew no longer exists. In its place stands someone wiser, stronger, calmer, and far more powerful than they ever imagined. That is the realization that shook them. Not because of magic. Not because of coincidence. But because genuine growth has a way of surprising everyone. especially the people who believed they already knew your story. And sometimes, the greatest shock isn't watching someone become successful. It's realizing they became successful without needing the validation you once believed only you could give them. That realization is something they will never forget. Because from this moment forward, every time they think of you, they won't remember the person who once searched for answers. They'll remember the person who became the answer. Even after that realization, they tried to convince themselves it wasn't true. They whispered excuses to their own mind. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe they're only acting different. Maybe they'll come back to the way they used to be. But every new piece of information destroyed those comforting lies. Every time they heard your name, someone had another story. Another achievement. Another unexpected change. Another reason to admire the person you had become. And with every story, the pressure inside their heart grew heavier. Because they weren't just hearing about your progress. They were hearing about the future they almost walked away from. That's the part that hurt the most. Not losing an argument. Not losing control. But realizing they may have pushed away someone who was becoming truly extraordinary. For nights, they couldn't sleep peacefully. Their mind replayed old conversations. Words they should have said. Messages they should have answered. Moments they should have appreciated. The strange thing about regret is that it rarely appears immediately. It waits. Quietly. Patiently. Until one day, it arrives all at once. That's exactly what happened. The weight of everything they ignored crashed down on them in a single wave. Suddenly, they began noticing signs they had overlooked before. They remembered how patient you had been. How many chances you gave. How often you chose understanding over anger. Back then, they thought your kindness meant you would never leave. Now they understand something different. Your kindness was never weakness. It was strength. And strong people don't beg forever. Strong people eventually choose peace. That realization frightened them more than anything else. Because they could no longer predict you. You had become someone guided by self-respect instead of fear. That changes everything. When someone is ruled by fear, they're easy to manipulate. When someone is guided by self-respect, they become impossible to control. For the first time, they felt uncertain. Not about you. About themselves. Would they ever earn another chance? Would you even listen? Would you still believe anything they said? Questions multiplied inside their mind. The answers never came. Instead, silence answered them. And silence has a way of speaking louder than words. During that silence, they began watching your life from a distance. They noticed your energy seemed lighter. Your smile looked more genuine. You weren't trying to prove anything anymore. That confused them. They expected anger. Bitterness. Revenge. Instead, they saw peace. Real peace. Ironically, that hurt even more. Because peaceful people don't spend every day thinking about those who hurt them. peaceful people keep moving. That possibility sent another wave of panic through them. What if they're already letting me go? What if I'm becoming nothing more than a memory? Those questions echoed inside them day after day. Then came the moment that truly shook them. They heard someone describe you in a way they had never imagined. Not as someone who needed saving. Not as someone waiting for love. But as someone inspiring others. Someone bringing hope. Someone whose quiet strength was changing the atmosphere wherever they went. Hearing those words felt unreal. Because they remembered the version of you who once questioned your own worth. Now others were recognizing the value you had finally begun to see in yourself. That's when the truth became impossible to ignore. You hadn't simply changed your circumstances. You had changed your identity. And identity changes are powerful. When identity changes, habits change. Choices change. Relationships change. Destiny changes. They suddenly realized they were looking at an entirely different person. Not because your face had changed, but because your spirit had. They wished they had noticed sooner. They wished they had appreciated the quiet battles you fought. They wished they had celebrated your victories instead of assuming you'd always be there. Unfortunately, life rarely gives us the chance to rewrite yesterday. It only offers tomorrow. That reality humbled them. For the first time in a long time, their pride began to disappear. The walls they had built around their emotions started cracking. They no longer cared about winning. They no longer cared about being right. They cared about one thing: whether there was still a path leading back to you. Every possibility played through their imagination. What if they reached out? What if you ignored them? What if you smiled politely but felt nothing? What if someone else had already become important in your life? Every scenario ended with the same uncomfortable feeling. Fear. Not fear of rejection alone. Fear of realizing they had waited too long. Sometimes the hardest lesson life teaches isn't how to find someone. It's how quickly someone can become irreplaceable after you've taken them for granted. That lesson now follows them everywhere. Every quiet moment reminds them of you. Every meaningful conversation somehow circles back to your memory. Every step forward in their own life is interrupted by one question. What would have happened if I had recognized their value sooner? They'll never know. Because time only moves in one direction. Still, something inside them refuses to give up completely. A small voice continues whispering that perhaps this story isn't finished. Perhaps there is still one conversation waiting to happen. One truth waiting to be spoken. One final opportunity to show the honesty they once buried beneath fear and hesitation. Whether that moment arrives or not, one thing has already become undeniable. The discovery they made didn't simply surprise them. It transformed them. For the first time, they understand that genuine love isn't built on possession. It's built on appreciation. And appreciation delayed for too long often becomes regret. That regret now lives quietly inside them. A constant reminder that the person they underestimated became the very person they cannot stop thinking about. And every single day, that realization grows stronger. Days turned into weeks. Weeks slowly became months. Yet something refused to fade. It wasn't guilt alone. It wasn't simple curiosity. It was the overwhelming realization that no matter how hard they tried to distract themselves, your presence continued to echo inside their mind. They tried staying busy. They buried themselves in work. They spent more time with friends. They convinced themselves they had moved on. But every now and then, something completely ordinary would happen. A familiar song. A certain place. A phrase someone casually mentioned. And suddenly, every memory connected to you returned with incredible force. The strange part wasn't that they remembered you. The strange part was how differently they remembered you. Before, they focused on your mistakes. Now, their mind replayed your kindness. Before, they noticed your imperfections. Now, they couldn't stop thinking about everything they had failed to appreciate. It's amazing how clarity often arrives long after the moment has passed. One evening, while sitting alone with their thoughts, they asked themselves a question they had avoided for far too long. What if I was the one who misunderstood them all along? That single question opened a door they had desperately tried to keep closed. Behind that door were countless memories. The time you stayed calm while everyone else lost control. The moments you supported people without expecting recognition. The sacrifices you made quietly, without announcing them. The dreams you continued chasing even when nobody believed in you. For years, they saw those things as ordinary. Now they realized they were extraordinary. Because not everyone chooses kindness when life becomes difficult. Not everyone chooses integrity when shortcuts seem easier. Not everyone continues believing in tomorrow after yesterday has been painful. You did. And now they understood why people naturally felt drawn toward your energy. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was the quiet strength you carried without needing applause. That realization humbled them. Completely. For perhaps the first time in their life, they stopped asking what they wanted from you. Instead, they started asking what they had actually given to you. The answer wasn't comfortable. They realized there had been moments when you needed reassurance. They offered silence. Moments when you needed honesty. They offered uncertainty. Moments when you deserved appreciation. They offered assumptions. Those memories became impossible to escape. Every one of them carried the same message. You deserved better. As those words echoed through their thoughts, something inside them shifted forever. Pride no longer mattered. Ego no longer mattered. Being right no longer mattered. Only truth mattered. And the truth was impossible to deny. They had underestimated one of the most valuable people who had ever entered their life. That realization hit them harder than anything before it. Because value is rarely recognized while it quietly stands beside us. Most people recognize value only after distance creates perspective. Now that perspective was painfully clear. Meanwhile, You continued living your life. You weren't trying to prove anyone wrong. You weren't seeking revenge. You weren't waiting for applause. You simply kept becoming the person life had been preparing you to become. Every challenge made you wiser. Every disappointment made you calmer. Every setback taught you something new. Without realizing it, you had become an example of resilience. People began trusting your judgment. They admired your patience. They respected your ability to remain steady during storms that would have broken someone else. Your person watched all of this unfold from a distance. And every new discovery strengthened one undeniable truth. They hadn't lost interest in you. They had lost the illusion that they fully understood you. The more they learned, the more mysterious you became. The more mysterious you became, the more impossible it was for them to stop thinking about you. One night, they imagined something that frightened them. They pictured your future without them. They imagined you laughing, building new memories, achieving new dreams, standing beside people who genuinely celebrated your success. Instead of feeling jealous, they felt something even deeper. Regret. Because they realized someone else might one day receive the love, loyalty, patience, and understanding they once overlooked. That thought stayed with them. It followed them into every quiet moment. It became the question they could never answer. What if I had simply appreciated them when I had the chance? There is a lesson hidden inside this entire story. Sometimes the greatest shock isn't discovering someone has changed. The greatest shock is realizing they became everything you secretly hoped they would become. Only after you stopped believing in them. That truth has a way of shaking people to their core. Because growth cannot be reversed. Once someone discovers their worth, they rarely return to doubting it. Once someone learns to protect their peace, they stop chasing people who constantly disturb it. Once someone chooses self-respect, everything around them begins to change. Your person finally understands this. That's why their emotions became so overwhelming when they discovered what you had done. It wasn't one single action. It was what that action represented. It proved you had stopped waiting for life to happen. You had started creating the life you deserved. That was the real shock. That was the truth they never expected. And that truth changed the way they see you forever. Now, whenever your name crosses their mind, they don't picture the version of you from the past. They picture someone courageous. Someone steady. Someone who quietly became stronger while nobody was paying attention. Someone who turned pain into wisdom. Someone who transformed disappointment into determination. Someone who refused to let difficult chapters become the ending of their story. Whether your paths cross again or remain forever separate, one fact will never change. The day they discovered the person you had become was the day everything they believed about you collapsed. And from those broken assumptions, a completely new understanding was born. An understanding that arrived too late to erase yesterday, but powerful enough to change every tomorrow they will ever face. Because some people don't leave the deepest mark through dramatic words. They leave it by becoming living proof that healing, growth, courage, and quiet perseverance are stronger than anyone ever imagined. And that, more than anything else, was the unbelievable shock they never saw coming.